Here's a little outline of what we'll do. One workshop that I like to do with teachers is called "A Dozen Teaching Mistakes and What to Do Instead." We identify just things that a teaching mistake, either an error of commission, doing something I shouldn't do, or an error of omission, failing to do something, like detecting small increases in student improvement and applying contingent teacher praise and attention. Probably the most powerful teaching tool anybody can have at their disposal. Anyway, I always preface that little talk. I advertise 12 teaching mistakes, but it's where you feel good. You know you're going to give people more than what you advertise for, because I always just naturally make another 20 or 30 teaching mistakes. One that I always make is I put and bring way too much stuff than you could possibly do in a week. We're going to do in the next however many minutes we have left. So it may be uncomfortable at points, because I'm just going to fly through stuff, to expose you to a number of strategies and ideas, and hopefully some of them will be some new things for you to consider in terms of designing and delivering education. Surely a number of them will be things you're well aware of. You may know the background research on it. It might remind you of, well, here's another strategy I could go back and look at. The good side of it is, in the end, all of these slides will be available on the center's website, and should any of it seem worth your time to go back and really look at it at a more sane pace and go through the slides, you'll be able to do that. And at the end, we've got a little handout of a great deal of the empirical basis, the peer-reviewed research that supports these strategies, so that you don't have to just buy what I'm selling. You can, as you should, be a good skeptic and say, well, is that really so? What's the science behind what he's saying? Here's a science that can help make education better. So just briefly, what is applied behavior analysis? And I'll touch on three of the very common misconceptions about it. So it's important to kind of understand, well, what it's not as well. Why is applied behavior analysis so well suited to contribute to help make education better? Purposely I'm saying to help, to contribute. Applied behavior analysts don't have all the answers by any means, but we've got a great science, a way to solve teaching and learning problems to help make education more effective. Then the bulk of it's going to then be looking at 5 examples of actual teaching practices, and I think most, if not all of these, I've got a brief little videotape. You'll see teachers and kids at work using these strategies. And these are all teaching practices derived from this science, applied behavior analysis. And then we'll end where to learn more about ABA. And I'll just kind of cut to the chase right now. You don't have to go far to learn a whole lot about ABA. It's right here in the room. So it's very interesting when you travel, the farther away the person is, it's like they're smarter somehow. So, I'm from Ohio in the state. Well, just down the hall, you've got Professor Dillenberger right here that can lay all of this stuff on you. And plus, she has a much better bedside manner than I do. And then Mickey Keenan. You've got tremendous resources here in Ireland, Northern Ireland, in the UK about this science. But since I'm here, I should fulfill my responsibility, or I won't get to go to the pub later, right? Well, here's a formal, technical definition of applied behavior analysis. Science in which tactics, somewhat fancy word for some particular procedures, a way to do something, and these aren't just any tactics, they're derived from some basic principles of behavior, laws, if you will, that describe human-environment interaction and how our interaction with our world, our experiences, teach us to do some things more than other things, and do some things in certain situations, not do them in others. Those basic principles, then applied behavior analysts do experiments, and that's the analysis in ABA. It's an experimental science to create a method, a technique of teaching, and then literally test it in an experiment to say, does it work? If so, under what conditions? How well does it work? With whom, and so on and so forth. And all of it's aimed for a purpose. It's not just casual knowing or intellectual knowing. Well, wouldn't it be nice to know this? Applied behavior analysts are driven by a common goal. And here it's described as improving socially significant behavior. Well, that's it. Behaviors that improve quality of life. So what will be socially significant is different for a 3-year-old than it is for a 63-year-old. It's the quality of life for a rugby halfback. Is there such a thing? Is there a halfback? Anyway, there are applied behavior analysts who do research on improving the performance of elite athletes. That's socially significant. For a youngster or even adult who doesn't read well, socially significant to be able to read. Wash the dishes, feed the pet, feed the hens, whatever. So behaviors that are relevant to people's life that make them better. But it isn't then just to change it, it's to change the behavior, and as you're doing that through this experimentation, analysis, if you will, learn, well, yes, behavior changed. Measurement can tell us whether behavior changes or not, but measurement alone doesn't tell, well, what changed it? And that's the experimental analysis. And then from that, you build over time, and there's at least 50 years now of this science, 40 if we want to be formal about a particular starting date. There's a pretty significant body of knowledge now, findings from this science. From those findings, that's what we're really going to look at, the things that are teaching methods or tactics that have been derived or built from that knowledge. 1968, we can use that as a meaningful starting date. It's not set in stone, but 2 events happened in 1968 that are relevant to this talk. B.F. Skinner, you've probably heard of that fellow. He wrote a lot of books, a lot of papers, and in 1968 he published it's a brief book, Technology of Teaching, in which he outlined his ideas at that time about making education better. Sadly, very few people have read this book. You go back and read it, what's in it today is as relevant today as it was then. I think most people would really be very surprised. What he mostly talks about here is curriculum design, how to sequence information that's presented to learners and do it in a way so as they respond, they tend to make very few mistakes. You get immediate feedback. When you do make an error, you get feedback that branches you over to help you get that correct next, and it builds. It's really some of the early work in what's programmed instruction. And the principles in this book are apparent in the very best designed iPad apps and curriculum computer-generated instruction today. 1968 was the first issue of the flagship journal of this science. Guess what? The Journal of Applied Behavior Analysis was published then. Now there was at least 15 years of significant research that built up to this, but this is an interesting kind of formal beginning of this field, saying, look, we have this journal, and here is how we'll define this science. Here are the basic dimensions that make it meaningful. Here are the questions that you should ask. And again, everything that was published in that very first issue, 1968, it's fun to go back. All of this is online for free. Just put Java, you can go on and you can download a PDF of every single article that's ever been published in this journal. And there's really cool stuff in the first couple years. People were just creative as could be, and we're real excited about, wow, we can apply these basic principles of learning to decrease cigarette smoking, and somebody doesn't like beer, we could teach them to like beer. Can't imagine that as, socially significant things. So all kinds of exciting work. And everything in it then is still relevant today. But here's what's especially exciting. This science has grown and matured and become not only more sophisticated in its ability to do the science, the measurement and the analytic tactics, but in using those tactics, the depth of the understanding of the applications. So there's kind of a historical background. Look, we'll cut up more recently. Many people around the world think that what ABA is a treatment for autism, and that's very understandable because that is the most public face of this science, for good, ill, or for good or bad. people think of ABA as a way to teach children with autism. And in fact, therapeutic and educational programs, particularly early intervention, that are programs that are based on this science, are without question have been shown to be the most effective by significant studies, research teams around the world. So ABA-informed education and treatment for children as well as adults with autism spectrum disorder, it is the best game in town. There's the most data behind it to show that it works. Parents increasingly know this around the world. I just put here, this is the cover of the Autism Advocate. It's a magazine, if you will, by the Autism Society of America. This was a few years ago, and it's not a particular behavior analytic group per se, but they're coming around saying, you know what, this is important. This is a way to go. Don Baer is one of the first editors of the Journal of Applied Behavior Analysis, a father of, if you will, of the science, and this is a comment by him about the relevance of ABA for helping children with autism. One of the most significant events that brought this information to the public, parents in particular, again, I'm sure many of you are familiar with this book, Let Me Hear Your Voice by Catherine Maurice. And it, written by a mother, tells the story of her family being affected by children, a boy and a girl, both diagnosed with autism, and then going everywhere as any parent would, desperate for help. Hearing this, finding out that, trying floor time, trying hugging, trying megavitamins, trying the whole thing, and eventually somebody knocks on their door, and it was a graduate student at Columbia University in New York. Her name's Bridget Taylor, by the way. She's now a PhD, does a lot of research in applied behavior analysis, has her own school. Anyway, it's not magic, as I'm sure you know. It's 2 steps forward, 1 step back, sometimes a step forward and 3 back. It's roll up your sleeves, a lot of direct, systematic, careful, thoughtful work evaluated by direct and repeated data collection of making an environment such that it increases the likelihood that the child will make the kinds of responses that will improve his or her quality of life, and in turn, their significant others and families. Anyway, this book's been translated in lots of different languages. If you've not read it, I really encourage you to look at it. And if you are a parent or working with parents and families, it's a good read. And it's not an advertisement for ABA. It's a powerful book. She's a wonderful, wonderful writer. Now what we have today is, in a way, this success, if you will, and general understanding that something called ABA is the way to go with children with autism is, one, people think, well, that's just what ABA is, a method for treating autism. And then within that, there's this notion that applied behavior analysis consists only of one-on-one teaching, typically seated at a table, where the teacher, trainer, therapist presents a series of instructional trials. Each one's discrete, it's its own thing. So you hold up, what letter is this? Antecedent. Student says H, or what sound does this make? And teacher gives feedback, and it's nice, maybe takes a little data. You say, well, how did that, if that's a misconception, how did it come about? Well, understandably, again, because a very significant part for the training for not only many children with autism, but teaching a physician or a dentist or a car repair person or the rugby halfback is discrete trials. But behavior analysts didn't invent discrete trials. What behavior analysis brings to that is an understanding of the teaching and learning principles that make a discrete trial more or less effective. So what's a discrete trial? It's really a structure. It describes a conversation or a dialogue between somebody in the role of teacher, somebody in the role of parent. So I'm the teacher, and let me see. So Lisa, hi Lisa. Hi. You're the student. So Lisa, what's this? Good job. So there's a discrete trial. Antecedent, what is this? A response, I give her, okay? And then depending on what the student says in this dialogue, a skilled teacher who knows how to make discrete trials as effective as possible will respond back in different ways. correct response, confirmation, affirmation. Next, mistakes, different kinds of mistakes means I'll respond differentially to make that. So a very significant part of effective programs for many, if not most children with autism is being exposed to discrete trials. Because that's so prominent, though, people think that's just what ABA is. I'm going to show you 2 video clips. They're very short. First one is structured language training activity, and it's using discrete trials.
Hey, what do you want to work for? Do you want to work for Winnie the Pooh? You want to work for Winnie the Pooh? Say yes! Yeah. Yes, okay. We're going to work for it. Ready? Here, let's read, Aya. What is your name?
Aya.
That's right! Way to go, kiddo! Good job! Can you give me 5s? Aya, give me high 5s. All right, way to go! Good job! You ready? Let's read! Ready? Let's read. What is your mom's name?
Winnie.
Rita! Good work! Way to go! Nice job, kiddo! Nice job! Let's read. What color are your eyes?
Eyes.
What color are your eyes?
Eyes.
Oh, nice try. Nice try. Look, kiddo. What color are your eyes? Brown. Way to go.
So there you see she made an error, and you can see a particular error correction procedure. Instead of just having her stumble through, well, now it's brown, let's present the brown, and then we'll go back, and then she'll probably be able to do brown independently. So clearly there, very structured setting, but with a purpose. They've got some objectives from that lesson, the kinds of skills that are emerging and Aya is developing. So now we're going to look at another brief clip. This is actually in the same program. This is a public school program in Columbus, Ohio, where I'm from. And a very common way to serve many children with disabilities, not just autism, is called a resource room in the United States. It's a special classroom where the child will go for some part of the day and then is mainstreamed or included most of the day. Well, it depends on the child, his or her needs, in the general education classroom. But here, these 2 clips were within this resource room, and we're going to see another little girl, both with autism, different teacher here. And this teacher is also using knowledge derived from the science of ABA to work on some language skills with this, but it's with this child, but it's going to look very, very different.
How old are you?
7 years old.
Very good. You know what? I'm 24.
I'm 7 years old.
Good job. What color are your eyes?
Red.
No. Aurora, what color are your eyes?
Yellow.
No. Aurora. Hey, stop. What color are your eyes?
Yellow, no brown.
No, you're right. What color are your eyes?
Brown.
You're right. Good
I
job.
said my eyes are brown.
Yeah, they are. Good job. Aurora, I like your picture. Now what?
Scissors.
Hmm? What? Can you ask for us?
Can I have scissors, please?
Sure. Let's see if we can find some scissors. A coconut house?
A coconut house.
Who lives in your coconut house?
It's a red piece of fire, and it burns up doors.
Oh my. Who lives in the coconut house? Does the girl live in the coconut house?
Yes.
Yes.
So we cut her out and put her near the coconut house.
Put her what? Put her...
Near the...
Do you need something else,
I need
Aurora?
some glue.
Okay, that was good asking.
Glue.
Blue?
Glue, not glue, it's glue. Some glue paste and
There you go.
You gotta put the girl near the house.
There you
She's
go.
far away. Just put the girl.
Aurora. There you go.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
A lot going on there, as I'm sure you picked. So some of you just watch this. That's nice. It's a teacher or a parent having a coloring activity with a girl. And it is that. It's also a very skillfully planned lesson using knowledge from applied behavior analysis to make it effective. Now you'd look at that and say, gosh, that teacher, why didn't she have the scissors and the glue ready for the child? She didn't have them out on purpose because she knew it's a cutting and pasting activity. Aurora's going to need at some point and want, i.e. that makes the scissors or the glue a reinforcer. I'll respond to get it somehow, to need those. The whole thing is to build her language and her communication skills. So you notice when she wanted the scissors, this whole talking to other people is kind of hard yet. It's easier just to rip it. So she's starting to rip it, and the teacher just got, and then she asked for the scissors, she got them. Time to glue. I need the glue. It's easier. Okay, you have the glue over there. You saw she just started to walk over and just, no, you have to ask for it. You have the glue, and then the last part, gosh darn it, thank you. A natural consequence, a reinforcer in this case, for speaking, interacting, saying thank you when you should, and so forth, all built in. Now, if you want technical behavior analysis speak for that strategy that was used in this clip, it's called embedding motivation operations. Ooh, embedding MOs. And the motivation operation was to create a situation where if I'm the learner, I need scissors and glue, but they're not there. And now I'm motivated to get them. How do I get them? In this case, I needed to talk. Okay? Applied behavior analysis there as well. So to say there's an ABA method really is not so. It's a misnomer. Because applied behavior analysis doesn't describe any particular method. And it's not any brand name use. ABA is not the Lovaas method. ABA is not pivotal response training. ABA is not PECS, picture exchange communication system. However, all of those well-known, and if you will, brand name programs or approaches are built upon the science of applied behavior analysis, but they're not the science themselves. And so it's very confusing, understandably so, I think, for consumers, for policymakers in government, in towns, for school people, and most of all for parents. And one parent would say, oh, well, we're doing the verbal behavior method. Oh, well, that's no good. I'm doing PECS. And those are all strategies based on applied behavior analysis. And what's going to be most effective for any particular child and situation is going to depend on evaluating the effects on that child. Ultimately, really, how well those programs are implemented. What ABA, what this science really offers educators is a collection of strategies, overall approaches, and then tactics, more particular procedures that have empirical, i.e. research, peer-reviewed research evidence of effectiveness. And there's also a nice, very optimistic, humanistic philosophy that's central to a behavioral approach. Most important, though, if you said, what's kind of the bottom line? What's the thing that you get from applied behavior analysis? It's a commitment to make your decisions on what to do next based on the child, the learner's always right. So you measure. That's this data-driven decision making. A couple other misconceptions. Well, okay, there's this long history of research with behavior analysis being used with students with problem behavior, emotional disturbance, and there is. There's not as much research. There's more now, which is good. But again, it's understandable how some of these ideas come about. There's more research on dealing with challenging and problem behaviors than there is on teaching reading, math, science, playing the flute, and so forth. So many educators think, well, you could use it for misbehavior and classroom management, but they don't think about it teaching the academic curriculum. And similarly, there's so much work with not just children with autism spectrum disorders, but broader developmental disabilities and other disabilities that we don't think about ABA as your typical kid in the classroom. And we certainly don't think about it for gifted and talented, really, really bright kids. Those of you who are students or coming into this field, boy, there's an area that's completely open and sadly almost no research whatsoever by applied behavior analysts with gifted and talented students. Look in the subject index of JABA, it's not there. It should be, but these are misconceptions, because every time we go out and people try to use these principles with learners of various types and various settings with various socially significant target behaviors, things we want to change, guess what? It works. So, why is this such a good thing for applied behavior analysis? I actually came up with 12 ideas once, and I think you can make a case. I at least tried to in a paper. This is in the reference list if you want to look at it, of why applied behavior analysis is good for education. It's meaningful, effective, focused, broadly relevant, and so forth. We're going to look briefly at the 4 that are highlighted here. But you know, you go through this, and when I was a kid, I was in the Boy Scouts in the U.S., and you have this, forget if it's the pledge or the motto, but you know, a Boy Scout is trustworthy, loyal, helpful, friendly, courteous, kind, obedient. There's 12 of them. I probably can't do all 12 of them anymore. And you look at this and you say, whoa, it's just like the Boy Scouts. What's not to like about ABA if it's that good? But there are reasons why this science and the principles that and tactics it's developed has not been welcomed with open arms in education, and that's understandable too. And this paper, if you're interested in others, kind of look at that. But just briefly on a couple of these, the effectiveness part is the analysis, and I just put a graph up of a study as a visual prompt here to point to it and say again, the experimental analysis is what really makes applied behavior analysis what it offers educators, being on solid ground, on scientific ground. As Baer said, it's the acid test proof of functional, replicable relationships. Let's take each of those. A functional relationship. Here's 6 different 4th graders. This was an experiment in which for the first 2 weeks of class, every day a 20-minute lesson was American Social Studies, I think. The teacher presented information. It was 20 regular 4th grade students in this class, and she'd present information on whatever that social studies unit was and ask questions. And students would raise their hand. She'd pick on a student to answer the question, give feedback, continue like that. That's why it says HR there, hand raising phase 1. Here's 1 student, 2 student, 3, 6 students. These kids were selected for observation during the whole lesson because they were the kids that participated the least, had the worst grades, had some misbehavior. They were the kids that were really struggling in the classroom. The black dots are the number of actual academic responses in this 20-minute lesson that this boy did. 0, 1, 3, 0, absent, 0, absent, 0. The open dots are the number of times he raised his hand. So you say he's kind of trying, but there's 20 kids in the class. I'm not going to get to respond that often, am I? Even if I want to. Okay? Then they went to response cards. We'll see a video of that in a minute, but it's basically every student had a whiteboard and they could write on an answer, and the teacher would say, what is this? Write your cards up. Okay? And now there's no more open dots because we don't raise our hands. We just, here's his active responding, boom. Went back to hand raising, boom. Back to response cards, boom. When you can turn behavior on and off like that, so the behavior change, in this case, more participation in class, becomes a function of, if you want, you could say caused by what? Well, in this case, the intervention, the independent variable for those of you doing research. The use of the response cards. Boom, boom, boom. It's replicable within this child. That's one experiment replicated 5 times. And we see this same, he's absent all of there. You see this same change in behavior when you change the teaching procedure. Over time, you get a second study, a third study, dozens of studies with different age kids, different topics. Researchers in Ireland, in the US, in Japan looking at, and after a while you've got so much data on something, that's when people start to say, this is an evidence-based technique. We're pretty confident it would work. That's the analysis in applied behavior analysis. It's self-correcting if we apply the science properly. By self-correcting, we mean, here's a teacher, this is a middle school learning disabilities teacher. This young man's working on building up his reading fluency, not just to decode and say the words correctly, but fast enough to be useful skill. Teacher does 1-minute timings with him, they record them together. And when you have those data like that, direct, frequent measurement of student performance, then the self-correcting part is, if it's not working, I can change what I'm doing. If I don't measure, I'm very prone to make 2 fundamental teaching mistakes. What are they? The first one is continuing a method of instruction that's not working. That student's actually not learning what I thought I'm teaching them. Well, why would you ever do that? Well, one, I'm not measuring, so I don't detect any change of behavior, and I'm likely to be swayed by things. It's fun to do. Comes in a fun box. The kids like it. It's easy. There's all other reasons to do something. Those aren't bad reasons, but they should be secondary to, does it actually work? The second fundamental mistake is, I stopped doing something that's actually working, and I didn't know that. If we weren't counting, without counting, and that's the basic tactic for measurement. It's typically you count something. Presence, absence, how many is it there? Without counting, how many of us could tell that Corolla, this little girl that's working so hard to be a better reader, and we're doing some daily work with her, that her rate of correct words read correctly per minute has gone from 65 to 70. If we didn't count, we'd never know that. But being able to detect those small bits of improvement, especially for a new skill that's tough and we're working on it, without measurement, we might miss that and give up the effective strategy for the wrong reason. Just like we can keep one for the right reason. Oh, it's fun, it's in a pretty box, it's cheap. The wrong reason is learning a new skill can be tough. So when we're having Corolla do this, she's scrunched up and she's working hard. Like that rugby halfback learning a new skill, or the batsman. Mickey was trying to explain cricket to me last night. I have no idea about that. It's learning the flute the first day. It's tough to learn new skills, so we might quit when we're actually making progress. So done right, it's self-correcting. It's very empowering for parents, for therapists, for teachers to use this method, because one, it's focused on particular goals. You have a good body of science to base your initial efforts on. You're going to take data on your efforts and make changes as needed. And typically what happens, things do get better. And what is that? That's a reinforcer. That's a reward for the teacher, the parent, the therapist. And you tend to feel over time, not cocky, not arrogant, shouldn't be, but feeling pretty confident that, you know what, I can tackle this next difficult teaching challenge. There was a U.S. Secretary of Education some years ago. Terrence Bell was his name, and he said there's 3 important things to know about education: motivation, motivation, and motivation. I don't know if any of you are real estate agents, but that's what when they're selling you something, location, location, location. You say, motivation, that's pretty darn important. It surely is. And if there's anything that applied behavior analysis can help educators with, it's certainly understanding of how does motivation work? How can we best arrange it? Contrive it, absolutely contrive it. Teaching is contriving, school's contrived. I mean, how contrived is this, the 30 of us in this room sitting here, when we could be out on this beautiful day walking around Belfast? So we arrange environments to try to help us teach one another and learn things. So education's contrived to begin with. It needs to be. And lessons are contrived. And we'll contrive, meaning create, a situation like that teacher did by keeping the scissors and the glue away to motivate the child to use that skill. And then she's using it in a natural situation. Over time, we systematically are able to and need to fade and withdraw our contrived rewards and reinforcers. And the student, the learner's behavior comes under control of the naturally existing, if you will allow me, contingencies of reinforcement, the stuff that kind of makes the world go for us. Now, let's get to some examples then of some teaching tactics. Each of these we're going to look at an application in a mainstream classroom or an inclusive classroom where most all of the students are typically developing kids, but in each case there are some students with disabilities, sometimes with autism, but a whole range. And what I'm hoping to get across is how these techniques can come in and be useful for all the students in the class. We're going to look at two strategies that applied behavior analysts have not necessarily invented, certainly not in the case of response cards, a little bit more, or choral responding, a little bit more on this one, but where applied behavior analysis research has helped understand how to make these techniques as effective as possible. Two on dealing with group instruction, one helping students become more independent and self-reliant, teaching students to work together collaboratively, and then a bit on peer tutoring as a strategy to actually teach students to teach one another. So group instruction, we've got two strategies we're going to look at for group instruction. And we'll just start by reminding ourselves of how difficult it is. Now, every teacher's not as fortunate as I am today to have a wonderful class of bright, attentive students who are obviously so interested in what we're doing. I figure I could get away with this for maybe another 10 minutes. And they're going to say, okay, let's do something, right? What I mean by a group is there's more of them than there are of us. Depending on who the students is, two can be a big group. And of course, one student can be more than any of us can handle at some certain time. But the vast majority of teaching around the world is a teacher with a group of students. And it varies whether it's 5, 10, 15, 20, 35, depending on the location, the school, the supports, and all of that. But group instruction's the norm. And it's the norm from the first grade through graduate school. No matter the content or the students, you've got at least all of these things to try to do. Maintain their attention, enable every student to participate meaningfully, to respond. Then I've got students responding. How do I give feedback for their responses? I've got to prevent, ideally, to be proactive, not have behavior problems, and then when they occur, deal with them. I should be able to monitor students' learning. That's huge. It's frankly almost impossible. I've got all that to do as a teacher with a class of kids. Now, you could ask 1,000 teachers around the world, is it important for students to participate? Every single one will say yes. Doesn't matter where they did their teacher training. They'll give you different reasons for it, but every teacher knows student participation is important. But how do you do it? Now, Mrs. Mortelman, she came up with one kind of guaranteed strategy that students would participate. She hooked all the kids up with a little pulley system. Oh, Dan, I see you'd like to answer that question. But she still got the same problem we saw in that graph earlier, the hand raising. This could be an active learning opportunity or instructional trial for Dan. His beard's a little long for a 5th grader, I think. But the other students are typically at best passive observers. Now in this case, they're very anxious observers. When's my arm going to go up? But the idea is, what can we do to provide every student in the class with frequent opportunities to respond? And that's where these two tactics, choral responding and response cards, come in. Choral responding's been around a long time, dates back before applied behavior analysis. It's all the students in the group responding, typically orally, with their voices in unison to a question, problem, situation presented by the teacher. Preschool teachers have used it off and on, and certainly foreign language teachers. But even in those environments, you see it used not nearly systematically and frequently as it should, and we wonder why students don't really find why I can't speak French. I can hardly speak English, let alone. Now the schooling that I got in that was just it was very poor. It was a lot of doing what we're doing right now. The teacher's telling me about France and how to do it, and you'd take turns, but you didn't get enough opportunities to respond. So that's what choral responding is. And work in applied behavior analysis has helped us understand how teachers can use this very effectively. Let's take a look. This is a kindergarten teacher. These are basically 6-year-old children. It was toward the end of this, the American school year is end of August to early June, about 9 months. Every one of the kids comes from a poverty family. This is a special charter school. Inner city Columbus, it's I guess like Belfast. Columbus is about 800,000, and the suburbs there's about 1.5 million, but it's a big city school district. And these kids come, they get free breakfast, free lunch. They'd never been in school before. Very common broken homes or single parent, and you know it's difficult. They come to school with not a lot of background and supports that more advantaged kids do. And this is Tanya Still, their teacher, and every teacher in the school did this in the morning, various times during the day as well. But we'll just see a couple minutes of her. It's a morning warm-up activity. So they're just kind of getting their brains going and up in gear, and they're reviewing different parts of the curriculum.
How many states are in the United States of America? Get ready.
50!
Say the whole statement.
There are 50 states in the United States of America.
Guys, quick, here we go.
Round and round, where I go, where I stop, nobody knows.
Open your eyes quick. Open your eyes quick. 10 seconds to tell me this state. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. What state?
Ohio!
Excellent. Close your eyes again. Here we go.
No!
Open your eyes quick. 10 seconds to tell me this state. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. What state?
Texas!
Last state. Here we go.
Round and round I go, where I stop, nobody knows.
Open your eyes quick. 10 seconds to tell me this state. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. What state?
New York!
Smart eyes are on me.
South!
Ready?
East!
You ready?
West!
Good job. I'm all the way over here in West Virginia, and I want to go all the way over to California. Which direction am I going in? Get ready.
West!
Good job. I'm all the way up here in North Dakota, and I want to go all the way down to Texas. Which direction am I going in? Get ready.
South!
Excellent. I'm going from Columbus, Ohio. Here we go.
Columbus, Ohio, St. Paul, Minnesota, Des Moines, Iowa, Jefferson, Missouri, Little Rock, Arkansas, Baton Rouge, Louisiana, Bismarck, North Dakota, Pierre, South Dakota, Lincoln, Nebraska, Topeka, Kansas, Oklahoma City, Oklahoma, Austin, Texas, Helena, Montana, Cheyenne, Wyoming, Denver, Colorado, Santa Fe, New Mexico, Olympia, Washington,
Olympia, Washington.
Salem,
Oregon.
Salem, Oregon,
Carson City, Nevada.
Carson City, Nevada. 5, 6, 7, 8.
5 plus 3 equals what number? Get ready.
8.
Good job. Say the whole statement. Get ready.
5 plus 3 equals 8.
5 plus 3 equals 8. Say the whole statement. Get ready.
5 plus 3 equals 8.
Excellent. 7 plus 4 equals what number? You have 7. Get it going.
7, 8, 9, 10, 11.
7 plus 4 equals what number?
11.
7 plus 4 equals 11. Say the whole statement. Get ready.
7 plus 4 equals 11.
8 plus 2 equals what number? You have 8. Get it going.
8, 9, 10.
Good job. Stop again. 10. 8 plus
$20.
$20. Good job. 10. Talking about numbers. Count by 5 to 100. Get ready.
5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35, 40, 45, 50, 55, 60, 65, 70, 75, 80, 85, 90, 95, 100.
Count by 10s to 100.
in there filming that day. Between the different, when she went from the math there, just she was saying, see the teacher's dimple, she's all, and you could hear the kids there all excited. What they were doing, they're so proud. They know stuff. They've learned things. And they said, oh, let's do the bugs, let's do the polygon. These are kindergartners. And she's got a stick and she's pointing to the geometric shapes. And I'm in there and I'm thinking, okay, I'll be all right if she calls on me circle, square, triangle. I can do that. You know, she's pointing, kids are going, nonagon. Think about that, you know, hexagon, you know, parallelogram. And then she's over, and to me it's a bug, you know, with a head and a tail. And they're going thorax, abdomen, little pore. Now, we can and should debate what are the most important things to learn really well. That's curriculum, and that is absolutely important to determine. So we're learning things and teaching things that are important for people, for learners, for children to learn. But what we shouldn't fool around with is, we should also not fool around with how we're going to teach. There are effective methods to really teach things. Now, teachers will see this. By the way, I never leave home without this video. If I did a talk, it doesn't matter what the title of the talk is, I always show this. Because if there's nothing else, people leave. Oh, did you see that teacher with the kids? It's cool. But teachers will see this and they'll say, okay, yeah, choral responding. I bet I can see how that could be effective to review, to practice knowledge and skills the students have already learned through some other method. But what is learned is not determined by the delivery method. What a student learns or doesn't learn, you know, the phrase, the devil's in the details. Well, the good stuff's in the details too. And what are the details? It's the design of the instructional examples, what you present students to respond to, in what context and in what format, that part of the lesson design. So what we did with these same students, we're going to see another little video clip. This is one of my former PhD students, Charlie Wood. He's now a special education professor in North Carolina. But we asked Ms. Still, the teacher, to give us, in their arithmetic curriculum, she picked something that they hadn't learned yet, but it would be useful to see if we could teach it to them using choral responding. It was going to come in a few weeks. And it's those symbols for greater than and less than. The kids knew the equal symbol. They knew plus and minus. They could count, as you see, to 100 and back. But they hadn't done greater and less than. So he started with a pretest. And the pretest was paper and pencil, 10 items. And an item had a digit from 0 to 10, then a box, and then another digit that was either more or less a digit from 0 to 10. So for example, 5, box, 7. The next one is 10, box, 3, that kind of. 10 items, 5, the proper symbol. The kids were told, write the arithmetic symbol in the box that shows the relationship between these two numbers. And they had done similar things. They understood the direction, they knew what to do, but they'd never experienced this thing. So you wouldn't expect any kids to get it. But we did the pretest we wanted to find out. And then you'll see about a minute and a half of this lesson. The entire lesson was 12 minutes long. It's all choral responding except for the last 2 instructional trials where the teacher goes to pencil and paper. The kids all have a paper with 2 practice items in the top. Pencil, teacher says how to do it in writing, gives feedback, and then the kids are on their own. The last 10 are the post-test. Okay? We'll look at the video and I'll show you what they knew before and what they knew 12 minutes later.
You ready?
7.
I put a dot here and I put a dot here.
Here.
4 and 9, which number's bigger? Get ready.
9.
Which number gets 2 dots? Get ready.
9.
Do I put it here?
No.
Do I put it here?
Yes.
Yes. Dot, dot. 8 and 4, which number is bigger? Get ready.
8.
Which number gets 2 dots? Get ready.
8.
Dot here. And dot here?
No.
Dot here?
No.
Dot here?
Yes.
You are so smart.
6.
6 gets 2 dots. 9 and 2. Which number is bigger? Get ready.
9.
Which number gets 2 dots? Get ready.
9.
I put it right here, right?
No.
Do I put it right here? Number gets 1 dot. The little number is 3. How many dots does the little number get? Get ready?
1.
And I put it right here. Right there. Do I put it up here?
No.
Do I put it down here?
No.
Do I put it way over here?
No.
Do I put it way over here?
No.
Put it right here.
Yes.
Got it. Good. You got the 2 dots next to the 8. Which number only gets 1 dot? 4. Go ahead and put it where it goes. Now you start at the top. Can you get all the way up there and reach? It's a long way up. Everybody say it with Bria. Across and back. Good. Here's how we would read. Nice job. Then read this sentence. Get ready.
7 is greater than
My turn. 7 is greater than 2. Do it with me.
7 is greater than 2.
All by yourselves. Get ready.
7 is greater than 2.
Which number gets 2 dots? Get ready.
2.
Put 2 dots by the 10. Remember, you do a top and bottom. Very good. Oh, you got it. You got it. There, you got the 2 dots. Wow, you got it. Nice work. 10 and... Wow, look at this. You're right, you're right, you're right, you're right, you're right, you're right, you're right. You're right, you're right, you're right. All 10. Way to go. Nice job. You've got 10 out of... How many were there? 10.
Yay!
Okay, Chavez, you are set.
It's also an example of destroying a child's self-esteem with contingent praise and attention. There's people who tell teachers that. Anyway, before and after the lesson. So designing, careful thought, what is the purpose of this lesson? What do I want a student to be able to know or do after this lesson that he or she didn't know or couldn't do before the lesson? That's your ultimate measure of, am I a good teacher? Am I imparting skills? And all things being equal, they never are, but of course all things being equal, the more effective teacher will impart more skills to more students and so forth. So here's choral responding that shifts, that is one way then to tackle that just practical problem of, I've got a whole class of students. And we know actively responding and getting feedback on those responses is a big factor in learning. But how do I do that with the whole group? Here's one tactic for doing so, choral responding. And it's one, like this response cards as well, it's what I think of as a low-tech teaching tactic. Now, high-tech's cool. We've got somebody in the room that's going to do her dissertation on apps and all of that. It's wonderful. And the best apps will make the best use of knowledge from, basic principles of teaching and learning. But the reality is most instruction occurs in rooms like this with teachers and kids with papers and pencils and an old board and so forth. And it will in all of our lifetimes for a long time, even in the so-called developed, richest countries in the world. So I had a chance a couple years ago. We were in South Korea and did a teacher workshop, and then the next day they took us to a school. This was a school, all different kids with disabilities, and we're going around, and here's this teacher's class. He was in the workshop the day before, and he's doing choral responding. He'd never done it before in his life, and they're doing, this is Korean currency and coins. These were secondary 17, 18, 19-year-old students with developmental disabilities. So it was daily living skills. They're learning how to be in an apartment and have money and make purchases and so forth. So he's doing choral responding. And then he also would turn it around, because we'd talked about how you can have fun with it and have students get to be the teacher. And so this is a student presenting to the other kids. Just show you a couple other real quick videotapes. This is video clips. These are kids in Hermosillo, Mexico, doing choral responding.
Bien, vamos a empezar contando de 9 a 9. Así que ya saben ustedes muy bien. Comenzamos.
9, 18, 27, 36, 45, 54, 63, 72, 81, 90.
Muy bien. ¿Cómo podemos saber? ¿Cuáles son las operaciones básicas?
Suma, resta, multiplicación, división, potenciación y multiplicación.
Inversa de la suma.
Resta,
Inversa de la resta.
suma,
Inversa de la multiplicación.
división.
qué rama? Saber el valor de la variable. ¿Y aquí la variable será esta?
No.
¿Siempre va a ser la?
No.
Dale. Muy bien. ¿Y estos se llaman? ¿Cómo se llaman?
Well, anyway, those kids can do algebra and they're second graders. You don't do choral responding all day, and that is not your only way to assess kids and have them respond, but it's a tactic that can be very effectively used at various points in a lesson, at various points in the curriculum, at various points throughout the school day. Another tactic, or second thing we'll look at is response cards. And it's just some physical thing, often but not always a card itself, that each student in the class has, and on the teacher's signal, typically just cards up, they hold up their card to display each student his or her answer to, again, a problem, a question, an equation. Two basic kinds, pre-printed and write-on. Pre-printed response cards, the answer's there and I hold it up. Write-on is typically a blank board and I have a dry erase marker and I write words or numbers or symbols and hold it up. Here's some pre-printed cards. The kind of universal one is green on one side, says yes, true, no, false on the other. It's independent of curriculum content. This is something, American history, the Civil War, colors. I like these two together because it shows, again, the strategy isn't something either for little kids or old kids or a particular kind of content. This is colors, most likely for very young children or maybe a little bit older with severe disabilities. This was an advanced placement art teacher at a real high-end, fancy special high school in Columbus where all the kids are going to the big universities, and kids in the art class, she is showing, it's so easy to do this now with the internet and you Google, so she's showing art. Let's say it's paintings in this case. And the students are learned to discriminate the genre, the type. Is that realism? Is that impressionism? Here's a few of the cards here, but now the response cards then can be on a little ring so they're all together and the students hold them up that way. Language arts teacher, this is just a file folder and then you find out it works, you go ahead and laminate it so it's more durable, says parts of a story. Teacher has a rubber band around these, she has them all in her file folder. I'm doing that lesson with these kids. They come in, if they see a response card on this desk or this chair, they know to pick one up, take a clothespin, that's how I mark my responses, and we're off to work. Animals, living things. These are two different response cards that were done in two different master's thesis experiments with preschoolers with autism and developmental disabilities. And it's just cardboard wrapped in felt, and then in this study, and then this has Velcro on the back and you can move it around. In this case, these boats are glued down. They're part of it. And they're not teaching 4-year-olds with developmental disabilities to discriminate a canoe from a motorboat. No. What they were doing, they were using this to teach relational concepts. First, last, second. If I'm in the class, one day I had the boats, the next day I had 4 different balls, the next day I had trees, the next day I had bears. Why? Because first, second, last, higher, bigger, under, over has nothing to do with is it red, is it green, is it a ball, is it a boat? See, this is, again, what kids will learn, and you want them to learn the right things, you've got to thoughtfully design the materials and the presentation. This was listening comprehension. It's a pre-reading thing. Teacher would read a children's story, and then the kids would, again, the numbers were glued on, and these little characters from the different stories had Velcro in the back. The teacher would read, and then the kids would add the characters as they hear them come in. Then over time, it gets more sophisticated. The kids have to listen to a whole page or a scene or two, and then put the 2 or 3 things on in order that they happened. So it's a way to have meaningful participation by every student in the class, and then an opportunity for the teacher to have visual access to all the kids' responses. And that's what helps me see where I need to provide extra help and assistance for kids and so on. Another teacher's class, another teacher in that school in Seoul, and here this guy, literally the next day after we did this thing, he's using white and blue flags. These were middle school students with developmental disabilities, and he was using them as response cards to help them learn to follow multiple step directions. So a lot of learners with the disabilities, if you say, put your coat on, might be able to do that, but if said, put your book away, then do this, and put your, I'm done. So this was a lot of practice in, blue, blue, white, white, blue, blue, and then they would adapt and fade that into practical activities. Write-on response cards. Let's see. Okay, here's a brief clip. This is middle school earth science. This is a school in Erie, New York. It's upstate New York State. Very, very diverse community. Their families where Spanish is the primary language. There's 2 teachers you'll see at work in here because there were 5 different kids in this class with disabilities. In the States we say with an IEP, an individualized education plan. And so the special ed teacher and the general ed teacher are working together. We'll just look at a bit and you can get a sense of how write-on response cards might be used.
This is a place where an animal lives. A place where an animal lives. Gets all its needs. Oops. Show me, please. Wow. Oh, yeah. What's the answer to this one, please? Habitat. Please erase. Let's try again. No, I can't use that one. Board right behind me. Water as a gas. Show me, please. Ooh. I thought I tricked you and there was no way I could. Water vapor. Very well done. Let's try another. That make food. What do we call that process? Plants that make food. Show me, please. You're happening? Very good. Oh, good, Whitney. Very 100%. Hardest word on the board. Very well done. How about when water is no longer, and look at all of them, when water is no longer in a puddle. What happened? Water that's not in a puddle anymore. Show me, please.
Evaporate.
Oh, exactly. Even said it all. What is that word?
Evaporation.
Let's try another one. All right. Should we do one more quick?
Yes.
One more. Autumn says, Autumn.
Okay. Actually, I don't know if you say that girl in the pink kind of in the front set actually has Down syndrome is in that class. Now with write-on response cards, they typically require what we'll call a recall response. Pre-printed, it's recognition. So I've got the names of equilateral, isosceles, and scalene, 3 basic types of triangles depending on the, right? And if I have 3 pre-printed cards with that, and the teacher's presenting triangles, I have those to prompt me. Oh yeah, I think that equilateral, that. So it's recognition. You might do that early. But if the world that I'm going to, whether it's the quote-unquote real world or my job or getting from the resource room to the general ed classroom or next year, whatever, if where I need to use this skill in the future requires a recall response, where you've got to think of it, recall it yourself, then you want to be sure that you always want to be sure your teaching in your lessons as students get towards the end represents the conditions they need to use this knowledge and skill in. So write-on response cards then require a recall response, and you can incorporate spelling if that's important. But here, what she was doing, this was the very first day of a new unit. She was introducing the technical terminology that they would be using over the next week's lesson. Photosynthesis, evaporation, and so forth. So she wants them to learn to spell them and to write them. So initially it's a recognition task. She had all the words written on the board and they're practicing. In a day or two they're not up there and I'm doing it as a recall.
Says yes, let's go for it. We'll do this rapid drill. How about...
Okay. You saw this graph before. Actually, this is one of the early studies on response cards. And just briefly, to give you a sense of the tremendous differences you get, not only in student activity and what we call active student responding, but in learning measures. This was the 4th graders where they did just a 20-minute lesson a day. And the graphs of those 6 kids across all the lessons when they did one at a time, you raise your hand, you get called on, a little less than 2 opportunities to actually respond, to answer a question in a 20-minute lesson, on the average for those 6 kids. About 30. You don't need to do a statistical ANOVA to see, wow, what a big difference. But wait, there's more. You ever see those TV commercials? They're saying, but wait, there's more. This is what's cool. Do the arithmetic. And if a teacher with these kids used response cards, just a 20-minute lesson a day in social studies, over the entire school year, instead of just a one at a time, every kid would have made more than 5,000 responses by June in social studies in that topic. Now, don't you think that I'd probably be a little more skilled at it and knowledgeable if I had that much? Now think about you're doing that in math, you're doing it in science, you're doing it in language arts, you're doing it in French. And you can just generate tremendous, tremendous amounts of active engagement. Kids do better on evaluations, on tests. This happened to be just right after the quiz we gave them, right after the lessons each day gave tests. Other studies in this line of research have done weekly tests, next day tests, and in every single case, students do better on exams or quizzes or tests over the content taught when it was taught with, in this case, response cards compared with the traditional way to participate. And kids like them too. Here it says 19 of the 20 had higher quizzes. What happened to the 20th kid? This is one of those little goody Miss Tushu. She knew all of this stuff a year ago. There was a ceiling effect. Didn't matter how you taught her. She's going to do, and that's cool. That's fine. Even high school kids will come clean and be honest on this and say, yeah, this is cool. I'm kind of a believer. These are making me smarter. It's good. And if you can get high school kids, you know, they don't like anything. If you can get them to be positive, that's pretty cool. A bonus of these high student engagement tactics is you get a reduction of misbehavior, of challenging behavior, of goofy noises, of out of seats, of poking others, and disrupting the classroom. This is a different experiment. All of these are on the handout, and you can go, I hope you will, don't just buy what I'm selling. You can go and you can look at all of these experiments yourself and judge for yourself what they might mean to you. But this is the same kind of experimental design. Instead of HR for hand raising, it says single student responding. Exact same procedure though. And that's response cards. Back to single student or hand raise, back to response cards. What's across the bottom? Sessions, but it was a daily arithmetic lesson. This is a different study, a different school, also fourth grade kids, but the 4 children here, all boys, were all being referred for emotional and behavior disturbance. They had really, really difficult behavior problems. They'd do anything they could, and they were very skilled at this to get out of school, you know, get sent to the principal. You know, thank you, you made my day, I'm out of here. And had done that, you know, for years. Now, we've also got data on their learning and their amount of responding, but I just want to show you the one graph where, and this was Mike Lambert's PhD dissertation. What he did, he used this rotating method of measurement. It's called momentary time sampling. You look at your participant, in this case student, for a moment in time. And you look and you decide, in this case, disruption, no disruption. And you've got those classes of behavior very clearly defined of what it means, like out of seat, poking somebody, throwing something, making goofy sounds, doing this with your chair. These kids had they were very talented. They had a lot of different things they could do. And it wasn't just cute. Sometimes it's really a disaster. It's a disaster for these kids. They're never going to get through school. They're going to be in jail. They're going to be selling drugs. They make it tough on everybody else in the class as well. So 10 times during the 20-minute lesson, you'd rotate. You look at this student 1, 7 times he's disruptive. 9, 7, well, you can see vast majority of the time. And that's why these kids were selected to be observed for this study. Went to response cards instead of hand raising. Absolutely nothing done to change how the teacher's responding to misbehavior, to try to catch them being good. Just giving them frequent opportunities to respond where they could be successful. Look at the huge reductions in disruption behavior. Went back to single student responding, back here, back down there. Now over time, what you'd like to think can happen is you get students where they're not only responding, but you've been thoughtful. You're not having them respond to algebra and they can only do 2 plus 2, you need to have a lesson where they can have some success and gradually build it. All of a sudden, these kids, for probably the first time in their little school careers, are being successful academically and getting praise and attention for academic participation and success. Well, how did I get it before? By being disruptive. So you can really make tremendous differences. You already saw that one. So on this handout you'll get in a moment, it'll mention some of these resources, and Corolla is going to make them, I think, all available on the center's website. So along with the slides, if any of these things that are mentioned as more readings and handouts, like how to do these strategies, you can go on and download them. The third one we're going to look at, teaching students to become more self-reliant. It's important for all kids in school, especially as they become older, to become more independent, to be able to kind of stay in your seat, finish a job by yourself, do more extended work, and so forth. It's a huge problem for kids with disabilities, very much so for kids on the spectrum, going into mainstream classrooms and to be able to stay in your seat and do a job and so forth. It makes a big deal on not only their acceptance in the class by the teacher and classmates, but their success. So we're actually going to see this little guy. Here's Brandon, and he's a second grader when we did this. This is about this is a few months into the school year, and at this time he's got his act together pretty well. He was just all over the place at the beginning of the school year. I don't know if you can see here, there's a little thing on his chest. I'll show you a picture of it in a minute. It's about this big. It's called a motivator. It's got a little battery in it, and you can set it for standard times or variable, and it just vibrates like a pager. And so you can wear it anywhere and you feel it, and it's a stimulus and you can respond to it. Well, you teach children to use that as a time when it buzzes to ask themselves, am I working? Have I got any work done? Yes or no? Yes. I give myself some points on the counter. But much better than me trying to explain it.
Hi, my name is Brandon Heward and I use a motivator.
Okay, and what is this motivator thingy? Explain it to us.
It is a sort of like a machine that buzzes in whatever time a teacher sets it for.
So how many minutes do I set it for? Actually, you set it. So how many minutes do you set it for?
5.
5 minutes. And what happens when it hits 0? What does it do?
It buzzes.
Show us. Yikes. Does that hurt?
Mm-mm.
Does it tickle?
Mm-mm.
Good. Okay. So when it buzzes, what does that tell you?
Sorry.
What does that tell you? If you're working and it buzzes, what does that tell you to do?
It tells me to put 5 points on my clicker.
Great. And I see you already have 5, right? Well,
Should
go
I-
ahead and put the
should
5 on there. Show us how it works.
Okay.
No, you can add 5 to that. Okay, great. So how many points do you have to earn at the end of the day?
109 today.
Okay, and what happens when you get 109 points? What do you do next?
I put a sticker on Brandon Jr. and he is my snail.
So Brandon Jr. is your snail?
Uh-huh.
Cool. Okay, so it looks like you already had a lot of great days so far. Okay, what happens when you fill up the shell with stickers?
There's a surprise at the end.
And there's a surprise at the end?
Mhm.
Awesome. So are you excited to get to the center of the snail?
Uh-huh.
So do you think other students would like to use a motivator?
Uh-huh. I really think a motivator would help students who have bad grades from lack of work. And I think it would be really good for the teachers and the students who do not think they can do their work. So it'd probably be great for.
Okay, so there's Brandon. And had two more things that will be on here for you to look at should you be interested on the website. A collaborative activity called Heads Together, where the teacher has groups of 3 or 4 kids in a team around a desk, and somebody's numbered 1, 2, 3, 4, and you present a problem to the whole class. And then what's cool about it, the kids, they literally put their heads together. It's called numbered heads together. You don't have to write numbers on their head, but they discuss, well, how do we solve this? What's the answer? How do we? But they don't know. Then the teacher randomly says 1, 2, 3, or 4. So we don't know who in our group is going to be asked to give the answer and explain to the class how he got it. What behavior analysts call this, it's called an interdependent group contingency. Think about it, where it's interdependent. We all depend upon and have to help one another. A lot of problems with collaborative things, it's very popular in education. Teachers say, well, the best thing, I know I'm supposed to have a diverse group of learners and I'll put them together. There's very poor, unclear expectations, very few active responses for the kids who really need to learn it. The kid who already knows it does the work for the group, and a lot of downtime and so forth. So numbered heads together is one of a number of these behaviorally derived teaching techniques that really put some muscle into a good idea like collaborative learning to make it real effective. And the last one's called class-wide peer tutoring. Tremendous, like a 30-year history of great research on that. Again, in this handout, guess we'll do that now. It's organized by these topics. It starts off ABA, what is it, why education. Then there's choral responding, response cards, self-monitoring, numbered heads together, and class-wide peer tutoring. And in each of these, there will be on the website, if you're interested, you could then download. And for example, with the choral responding, there's an article called Good Noise, saying it's good to have noise in the classroom if it's kids responding. In that article is a description of the curriculum design. The lesson you saw, teaching greater than and less than, you'll see it plotted out how it was put together. And the idea is you could look at that and you could see how to use that template to teach a whole wide variety of things. So I know I'm starting to go a little bit over my allotted time. You've been tremendous. I really appreciate the chance to get to talk with you a little bit today. Some of us are going to do some more talk later. I'd be happy to. I'll stick around as much as anyone's interested and able to talk more. Thank you.